Barr hasn't really dug into that or used the FBI to dig into much of that. So, I mean, there might be some hard feelings there, but I think overall, they got along pretty good. This other guy that's going to take over for what, about 3 weeks, I guess, a month, Rosen is his name. Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. I think Trump is still trying to, he's still fighting. You know, I mean, he's still trying. There's still some lawsuits that are in the pipeline. The Electoral College did vote yesterday. I don't know if you guys heard the news at all. But in several states, Nevada, Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, not Michigan, Republican electors also voted for Trump-Pence. So you have two competing sets of electors. That just keeps the door open, if you know what I mean. Okay, so Biden had more than 270 electors. Now, those have to be certified by the vice president in the Senate. Okay, and so they're not official yet. You know what I mean? So if you read a headline that says, Electoral College voted, Biden is now president-elect, it's not official yet. So, I mean, it's dangling by a hair, Trump's chances. You know what I mean? He's not giving up yet, but it's not. I don't see anything changing personally, based on what I've read. And I look at it, you know, I mean, I look at Twitter. Okay, so I'm following all the people that are involved in the lawsuits and that sort of thing. So I'm getting news that's not reported on the news. You know what I mean? And that's the only way you get this information is to go to Twitter. There are some other news channels like Newsmax and Epic Times and One America News, OAN, that is covering some of this stuff. But Fox isn't covering it, and any of the others are not doing it either. So. Okay, not sure if you saw my lecture yesterday. If you didn't, you need to. Okay, you saw the assignment I posted. Okay, that will be on the final. It's going to be 8 matching questions on the different hats that the president wears. Okay, it's not really difficult. So if you need an explanation of these different hats that the president wears, okay, here, 8 roles of the president. Okay, this is a good explanation. And then the homework is like scenarios. And so you look at the scenario and choose which one. And then the test will be more definitions than scenarios. Okay, but some scenario. It's a mixture. Okay, it should not be difficult. Okay. All right. So what my plan is today is to run through these notes really fast. None of this will be on the final. Okay, this is just like me and Mr. Ebright saying, I feel guilty if I don't cover this information with you. It's interesting, it's light, it's not difficult, okay? And again, some of this you already know. Okay, so let's just hop in here, okay? Talk about the vice president. This is kind of interesting, okay? 1 in 5 vice presidents throughout American history have become president by succession, meaning that the president either resigned or died in office, okay? 1 in 3 vice presidents have been elected president. Okay, so this is, have you heard of this Indian curse? The curse of Tecumseh, any of them? Oh, this is pretty interesting. Okay, 18, no, we got to go back further than that. Give me just a second. Okay, so you remember Tippecanoe and Tyler too? Harrison. What year was he elected? Harrison. Okay, there he is. 1840. Okay, so we start with 1840. And remember what happened to Harrison? He gave the inaugural address on March 4th and got sick, got pneumonia, and served as president for about 30 days. Well, William Henry Harrison is the hero of the battle over Tecumseh, the Indian. Okay, he was the governor of Indiana. Okay, and Tippecanoe was the name of the battle. Okay, so Tippecanoe and Tyler too, his running mate Tyler. Okay, Harrison dies in office because it's said that Tecumseh put a curse on the presidency. Okay, 1860. Who was elected in 1860? Yes, what happened? Yeah, he was assassinated. Died in office. 1880. Garfield? Garfield. Garfield died in office. 1900. McKinley, what happened to him? Was assassinated. Okay. 1920. I don't have any history students in here. Warren G. Harding died in office. FDR died in office. Assassinated. Okay. Now, in 1980, we elected Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was shot. The bullet went into his upper right side. And if the bullet would have been 3 millimeters in a different direction, he would have died almost immediately. But see, Reagan's just not any man. Reagan is more than human, okay? He broke the curse, all right? Reagan broke the curse so that George W. Bush wouldn't die in office either, okay? Now, Joe Biden, 2020, he's up there. Will he survive 4 years? Okay, health-wise, you know what I mean? He's our oldest president ever. Joe Biden is. Yes. Got shot what?
He was giving a speech and they got shot during and kept delivering the speech.
Oh. Is that one of our presidents?
I think so.
Really?
Maybe it wasn't during.
Maybe it was. I don't know. I don't teach early American, so it wasn't during the 20th century. Okay, so that's kind of interesting, right? So when you look at the vice presidency, officially the president of the Senate, okay, he can preside over the Senate anytime he wants, the vice president, okay? It's up to the discretion of the president as to how much power the vice president has. Okay, what was Mike Pence's thing? I mean, did he really do much as vice president? I mean, for a while there, he put Pence in charge of like COVID, right? He was kind of the point man. When Biden was vice president, he was the point man on the Ukraine. Okay. When, you know, it just depends. Okay. But really, under Obama, Biden really didn't do much. Okay. And Pence really hasn't done that much. Okay. They're just there in case something happens to the president. Okay. Some of these vice presidents really get along well with the president. Others don't. You know what I mean? Because Biden has a propensity to stick his foot in his mouth. And so Obama's kind of like, hey, just let's keep him to the sidelines. All right. I think Pence and Trump got along quite well. I mean, the fact that Pence survived 4 years with Trump tells you something, because a lot of his cabinet never survived 4 years. You know what I mean? Had a lot of turnover in his administration. Okay. Now, John Adams said, as VP, I am nothing, but I could be everything. And then John Garner, this is kind of funny. He was Franklin Roosevelt's first vice president. He said the vice presidency isn't worth a warm pitcher of spit. Okay. Now, Roosevelt was elected 4 times. Garner was his vice president for the first term. Okay. Roosevelt would end up having 3 different vice presidents. Okay. But Garner was from Texas, and him and Roosevelt had nothing in common. Okay. They usually pick the vice president to balance the ticket. Okay. It can be sometimes it's geography. Like, so if you have a candidate, like the Democrats have done this a lot, like JFK, who would he choose as his running mate? Lyndon Johnson. Okay. LBJ from Texas. So you got a New England liberal, okay, chooses Texas, just like FDR. He's from New York, liberal, chooses a guy from Texas. When John Kerry from Massachusetts ran, he chose a guy from North Carolina. Okay, why did Barack Obama choose Joe Biden? Well, Barack Obama didn't have much foreign policy experience. Biden had sat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for, I don't know, 30 years. And then you have Bush. Why did he choose Cheney? Cheney had more experience than Bush in a lot of areas. Why did Trump choose Pence? Because I tell you why. Because Trump is perceived as, okay, on his third marriage. Okay, does he go to church every Sunday? And we don't, I mean, not that Obama did either, but we're talking about the Republican Party here. You know what I mean? So who is Pence? Well, Pence is like super conservative man. You know what I mean? Like he could put a big C on his chest. You know, he's a religious person. You know, I mean, he's very religious, very pro-life. He's the governor of Indiana. Okay, he's like, hey, I need to get some of these Christians to vote for me. I'm going to choose Mike Pence to balance the ticket. Okay, so it's kind of interesting. And then Biden with Kamala Harris. I mean, obviously, he said early on he was going to choose a black woman. Okay, so it's political purposes, balance the ticket, younger person. Obviously, adding a woman to the ticket. This is the second time there's been a woman on the vice presidential as a running mate. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Okay, to balance out the extremity of their position. 25th Amendment is that process if something happens to the president. Okay, if the president is unable to run the country, he must be replaced. Okay, if the vice president assumes that spot, you have to replace the vice president. Okay, so the president gets to choose a new person. They don't have to be approved. The president gets to choose anyone. So like when Richard Nixon was president, his first vice president, Spiro Agnew, resigned. He chose Gerald Ford to fill that spot, and then Nixon resigned, and Gerald Ford became president. Gerald Ford had to pick a new vice president, and that was a guy named Rockefeller. Okay, it's kind of, interesting how that happens. Now, how do we know when the president is unable to be president to fulfill his duties? And this is something we may have to look at with Joe Biden. Okay, so let's say President Trump was running the country, and people were suspicious that, like, maybe he was losing his faculties. If you had a majority of the cabinet, there's 15 cabinet members, okay? If a majority of the cabinet feels the president, here's your cabinet, is unfit to be president, they can vote, okay? The other way is if the president wanted to resign and was unable to resign in writing, then they can't function as president, okay? Woodrow Wilson suffered a series of serious strokes in his last year of his presidency. This is before the 25th Amendment. Okay, and historians pretty much tell us that his wife was signing all of the documents for him. He couldn't write it. Because, when you have a stroke, sometimes you lose one half of your body or even more than that sometimes, you know what I mean? And Wilson couldn't write. Under the 25th Amendment, he would be ineligible to serve as president. Okay. All right, so here's your cabinet. Okay. So remember, it goes from president to vice president to Speaker of the House to Senate President pro tempore, then to the cabinet in the order that the cabinet was created. The last cabinet post created was Homeland Security after 9/11. There has been discussion about moving these around. Like your Homeland Security guy might be better placed up here, somewhere at the top, okay, than, behind the Secretary of Energy. All right. And don't get me started on these. Why do we have a Department of Energy? Can we not figure out how to do energy on our own? Did we not figure? I mean, look at how long our country went without a Department of Energy and education. Our country was like 200 years old before we added this. And by the time we were 200 years old, we had electrified rural America. How many billions of dollars are we ever going to balance the budget? How are we ever going to balance the budget if we don't cut the size of government? We can tax ourselves into oblivion. Did you guys have this talk in Mr. Langenfeld's class the other day? How are we going to balance the budget? Ever. If I'm running for president, first thing I'm going to do is I'm shutting down these two departments and probably this one too. And telling all those people to find other jobs. Now, some of those responsibilities we may need, we can roll them into different parts of government. Okay, but we're going to slash, I don't know, about $100 billion from our budget by getting rid of those three a year. That's a start. 100 billion is not going to go very far because we're talking trillions. You got to start somewhere. Okay, will this ever happen? Probably not. Because nobody has the courage to do it. Okay, I'm just going to kind of skip over this. You have the chief of staff that works with the president, the EPA guys. There's hundreds of different federal agencies in the executive branch, the FAA, the FTC, the FCC. I mean, so many. You know, you've got NASA, you got things like the, National Science Institute, Smithsonian. I mean, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different agencies, okay? FEMA, you got the National Security Team, Secretary of Defense, State, Homeland Security, CIA, FBI, Joint Chiefs, FEMA, Office Management and Budget, all kinds of stuff. Okay, executive powers. The president can interpret the law. Congress passes it. He gets to enforce it and interpret what they send him. Executive orders. Guys, these are something that presidents can do that fall short of being a law. It's more of a directive or a rule, okay? But usually executive orders really surround the federal government or federal lands or anything dealing with the federal government. It doesn't generally go outside of that, okay? The president gets to appoint people. He has diplomatic powers. We talked about that. He's the commander-in-chief. Legislative powers, we talked about that yesterday with different hats that the president wears. Here's some specific judicial powers that the president has that we're seeing right now, usually in the last few days or weeks of the presidency, of a lame duck presidency. You're going to see more pardons and reprieves and commutations. We did have a federal execution last week. Did you guys hear about it?
December 10th.
Huh?
Like the December 10th one?
Yes. Yeah. The guy that they had a husband and a wife, they were youth ministers. They had him in the trunk of the car, and they kidnapped him, and they fired some shots into the trunk, thought they were dead. One of them was. The woman was still alive, and then they burned the vehicle, and they know she died from smoke inhalation. She wasn't killed by the bullet. She died from the fire because of the autopsy. So that guy was executed. Now, President Trump could have granted a reprieve, which would postpone that, delay the sentence. Like if there's some new evidence that comes forward or something, he can delay it, or he can commute it, reduce it from death penalty to life in prison. Okay. I saw a post on Facebook this week. I think there's like 4 more federal executions that are planned to be carried out before Trump leaves office. He could give a reprieve and let Joe Biden decide what to do with them. Biden said he would probably commute those sentences to life in prison without parole. Pardon is legal forgiveness. Okay. So about 2 weeks ago, President Trump pardoned General Michael Flynn. I don't know if you've kept up with who that is. Michael Flynn was entrapped basically by the FBI in 2016. He's a 3-star general, was supposed to be Trump's national security advisor. During the last year of the Obama administration, Michael Flynn really pissed off Barack Obama. Okay. And Obama told Trump personally, he said, name whoever you want your cabinet. I won't argue with you, but do not put General Flynn in your cabinet. And Trump, left that meeting with Obama and called General Flynn and said, how would you like to be my national security advisor? And Flynn went down. The FBI came over and interviewed him. If you listen to James Comey, the director of the FBI, basically set up a trap for General Flynn, a perjury trap. And they threatened to go after his family. So Flynn pleaded guilty. Okay. They went after him. If you guys look it up and research what happened to General Flynn, it's a travesty. But Trump pardoned him. Okay. This guy gave 40 years of his life to this country, and what he pissed Obama off was over ISIS. Okay, remember? I know you don't remember, but when ISIS appeared in about 2010, 2012, Obama called them the JV. Okay, and said it's not that big of a deal. Well, it's a direct relation to his pulling out of Iraq in 2009. When we pulled out, Iraq was not ready to stand on its own 2 feet. ISIS developed out of that. And they started taking over large parts of Iraq and Syria. Okay? Obama calls them the JV. These people are horrendous, ISIS. And Flynn is telling people, no, these people are awful and we need to do something about it. And Obama didn't want that to go public. And Flynn made it public. And he paid for it. Okay. So he's been pardoned. Okay, a full pardon, which means it takes away your record. You not only get out of jail, it clears your record. Okay. Amnesty would be pardon for a large group of people. I have up here draft dodgers. During the Vietnam War, the draft was big. So if you were 18 and you were not in school, if you were not in college, even if you were in college, in some cases, people were getting drafted. By 68, kind of the Vietnam War had become pretty controversial, okay? And guys, people didn't want to go over there. And so they fled the country. They went to Canada. Now, we've talked about extradition, right? Well, Canada was against us being in Vietnam. So Canada did not extradite these people that dodged the draft. In 1976, when Jimmy Carter was elected, he granted amnesty to all those people that fled the country to avoid the draft. Okay, which made a lot of people happy and made a lot of people mad. Okay, I've got a friend of mine, he's an older gentleman that was going to Butler Community College at the time. He was taking 12 hours, which is considered full time, right? Okay. Well, he had this English professor that was kind of a hippie, and he didn't like it, and they didn't get along. And so one guy, Dick, just told him off. And he said, well, you need to drop the class. And so Dick dropped the class, went to 9 hours, and next week he got drafted. Now, he ended up not going to Vietnam, but he ended up making a career out of the Army. He stayed in for 20 years. And then when the Gulf War happened in 1990, he's like in his 40s. He got called back up, okay, during the Persian Gulf War in 1989. Okay, and he's got kids in school and high school and stuff. And he actually had to go to the Persian Gulf during the Gulf War. So it's kind of interesting. The draft dodgers, but yeah, so that made a lot of people mad, some happy, you know what I mean? But that's amnesty, okay? Electoral college we know about, okay? You guys know more than you need to know about. There's some different ideas for changing it, some of the problems with it, like the person that wins the popular vote doesn't always win the electoral college. All right, so we're going to do a quick overview of the judicial branch. And I need to get a new picture for the Supreme Court, don't I? Got some changes there. I don't know if they've done an official photograph with Amy Coney Barrett. I bet they probably have. But they always sit for this photograph, you know, yeah, this is old. Yeah, that's got Sandra Day O'Connor on it. Okay, she was the first woman ever on the Supreme Court. Yeah, this is the Rehnquist court. So yeah, he passed away, she passed away, he passed away, he passed away. She's still alive, but resigned. He's gone. He's still there. He's still there. He's still there. Yeah. Okay, time to update the notes. Okay, so generally, guys, talk about the court system, what jurisdiction means. Okay, like which court gets to hear what cases, why. The Supreme Court and how it takes cases. Civil liberties, that's kind of fun. I probably won't get to that. And then I do this thing with the 9 steps to a trial. And if you look at these amendments, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, all deal with people that are accused of a crime in the Bill of Rights. Okay, no illegal search and seizure right, no double jeopardy with the 5th Amendment, no self-incrimination. 6th Amendment, what do we got? Speedy trial, fair trial, trial by jury, and then no excessive fines and bails or cruel and unusual punishment with aid. Okay, 14th, also equal protection under the law for all citizens. Okay, so that's kind of your, you know, your civil liberties protected, your civil liberties with religion, assembly, speech, prior restraint deals with speech, and due process of law. Okay, those are your civil liberties. Okay, so let's just talk about the court system. We got here 25. Yeah, this will be good. Let me just start. We use what's called a dual court system in the United States. So we have federal courts and we have state courts. All right. So at the national level, the Constitution only mentions one court, and that is the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay, how many are there? There's one of those, right? And there's 9 people for now. Okay, unless the Democrats decide to pack it. Okay, we'll see. All right. Then you have what are called circuit courts or appellate courts. Okay, we have 13 circuit courts, which are appeals courts. And guys, the U.S. Supreme Court is appeals court as well. Now, guys, in here, you have 13 of these geographically spread out across the country. Kansas is in the 10th circuit of 13. Now, the 13th is the one in D.C. There's one just for D.C., okay? But the 9th circuit is way out in San Francisco. The 10th circuit is in Denver. Okay, that's where our circuit court is for Kansas. So several states are in each circuit, okay? There are 24 judges on each circuit. So if you multiply 13 times 24, that's how many appellate court judges there are in the federal bench. Okay? Now, when these people hear cases, 3 of the 24 will hear a case. Because it's a case on appeal. I'll explain. Okay? And then there are 94 federal district courts. Now, these vary in numbers, but you could have, each one of these 94, you could have 2 or 3 judges. Wichita has a federal district court. Okay? We are one of 94 cities in the country that has a federal courthouse. All right? We are Wichita. Okay? We're important. All right? So we do have a federal building in Wichita. Okay? Besides the post office. Okay? Now, these are the trial courts of federal courts. Okay? So like, let's say you rob a bank. That is a federal crime because most banks are members of the Federal Reserve. Okay? And if you're a member of the Federal Reserve and you rob a bank, that's a Federal Reserve member, that's a federal crime. Okay? So what we determine, how do we determine a case is federal or not? Okay? Only 5% of all court cases in the United States are in the federal courts. The other 95% are in state and local courts. Okay? So when you look at state courts, which this is our dual court system, okay? Every state, all 50, has a state Supreme Court. Every state has appeals courts. And then this is where the real meat and potatoes is. Okay? So we have county courts. We have municipal courts, which are cities. And within these, we have divorce courts, juvenile courts, traffic courts, small claims courts, etc. Okay? 95% of all cases, court cases in the United States, start here. Okay? This is what most people, the only courts they'll ever deal with are right here for most Americans. And hopefully you never have to deal with these. You know what I mean? Now, if you get a speeding ticket, well, or you don't have your insurance card, or your tags are expired, you got to go down to the traffic court, like Lily had to do 2 weeks ago. We're bad parents. So we bought her, we got her a car over the summer. And it was COVID, right? So you have a temporary tag. They gave you an extension on that. But we were like way past the extension.
What was the date?
Like July. And then she didn't have an insurance card because my wife didn't, she didn't print one off for her, So Lily gets pulled over. She didn't get a ticket. Like, he didn't give her a speeding ticket because I taught her how to avoid that. But she had to go to the court to present this stuff. And then I'm calling the other day, and they're on their way. It's like a 2 o'clock appointment. I'm like, I just called for some reason. And like, we're on our way to court. And I'm like, you guys are late. They had a 2 o'clock appointment. They got there about 2:10. I'm sure Lily was nervous because she thought, court, what's court? There was a guy in the basement sitting behind a 6-foot table, looking for your, proof of insurance and tax. That's it. Do that, sign something, and let you go. Okay. Sorry, didn't need to tell that story. All right, you got the dual court system here, okay? All right, let me get into this a little bit. So state courts separate from federal courts. Now, guys, since this was the only thing in the Constitution, the Supreme Court, Congress created all these other courts. And state governments create these courts. Okay? So as Congress giveth or createth, Congress can taketh away. Now, you cannot fire these people because they're idiots. You know what I mean? The Ninth Circuit out in San Francisco is overturned by the Supreme Court all the time because they've got some serious idiots on that circuit in the Ninth Circuit. Okay? And so they'll make a decision, it'll be appealed to the Supreme Court, and they're like, no, guys, that's not how it works. And they overturn it. You can't fire them. They're there for life. But when Jefferson was president, he was upset with some of these appellate court judges. And so he got Congress to disband the circuit and create a new one. If you disband the circuit, all those judges are retired, and then you get to pick new ones when you create a new one. Yeah, who's got the cojones to do that crap today? You know what I mean? But Jefferson did it. He said, I hate these judges. Let's shut it down. Appoint new ones. Yeah. And Trump has appointed over 200. Remember when I told you about the filibuster? And the Democrats got rid of the 60-vote filibuster, or the 60-vote threshold for federal judges. They got rid of it so Obama could get some of his through because the Republicans were filibustering Obama's appointments. And then Trump wins. And there was a bunch of vacancies. And Trump and McConnell have gotten through over 200. That will be a legacy of Donald Trump and 3 Supreme Court justices. You change the rules like that. Now, that being said, the lawsuit that Texas brought against Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, right? The lawsuit that Texas brought and 20 states joined. The Supreme Court did not take that case last Friday. Okay, only 2 justices said they should take the case, and that was Justice Thomas and Justice Alito. The 3 Trump appointments all chose not to hear the case, which is interesting, right? I mean, you would think those guys would feel a little bit of loyalty to Trump for choosing them. They didn't. The president has no control over these people. Once he appoints them and they're confirmed, it's over. Okay? And some of them feel very slighted. I mean, Dwight Eisenhower said this of Earl Warren. Earl Warren was Chief Justice from 53 to 69. Eisenhower said that was the biggest mistake I made in my presidency, was appointing Earl Warren as Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Okay? He thought he was a totally different guy. And he turned out to be one of the most liberal justices in history. But also some very important and good decisions were made under Warren, like Brown versus Board of Education, right, which desegregated our schools, which needed to be done. You know what I mean? So it was like, yeah, some liberal decisions, obviously, but some that were like key to like making us a better country. You know? Okay. Okay, appointment of judges at the state level, guys. Every state's different with this. In Kansas, the governor gets to choose the Supreme Court justices, but the governor has to pick from a number of people that the Kansas Bar Association appoints. Okay, which means you're never getting any right-wing judges in Kansas, because the Kansas Bar Association is liberal. So even if you have a conservative governor, you're not getting conservative judges. So every state does it different. But a lot of state court systems tend to be pretty liberal, okay? Even in Republican states, okay? Terms of pay, they serve for life. Supreme Court makes $244,000 a year. That's pretty good. You have court officers. If you ever watch court TV, like you have the bailiff, which is the cop in the room. You guys never watched like Judge Judy or anything like that? Okay. The bailiff is the police officer. You have a clerk that's assistant, the judge, and then a stenographer that types everything. That's a job, guy. Jurisdiction. All right, I got that. What time did I get out of here? 25? Okay. Maybe I'll save jurisdiction for tomorrow. And it's pretty good stuff. This is pretty interesting stuff, okay? So tune in for that, and I'll try and keep the lecture pretty short tomorrow, okay? Like this one here. I'm going to sign off, guys. So the final, okay, you're going to have a section on the executive branch, okay? So that homework is due tomorrow night, page 84, right? Tomorrow night, okay? Take your time on that. It's easy to figure out, okay? If you can't figure it out, go back and watch my lecture from yesterday. And I may keep a few of the judicial questions on there, okay, that I covered today and tomorrow, okay? This is not rocket science, guys. It's not rocket science, all right? I don't know if I put these notes up on, did I put these notes up on 7? Okay, or 6. I'll put them up today. And if you want to look them over. Guys, I'm not going to actually, guys, what's easy is that, like, I'm giving you this test, like, right after I talk about it. So, you know what I mean? So it should be fresh in your mind, or right after you do this homework assignment. So it'll be fresh, and it's easy. I mean, you guys know what, a docket is? What's on the docket today? You ever hear somebody use that term? What's on the agenda? What's on the calendar? Right? That's the docket. It's a court calendar's a docket. All right. You guys know what a plaintiff is?
The person being tried.
If I'm suing you, Hibble, I'm the plaintiff, you're the defendant. You're the defendant. Do you guys not watch Law and Order and stuff like that?
I would only watch Judge Judy at my grandpa's because
Yeah.
that would be the only thing on.
Okay, the prosecutor is the state, or the district attorney brings the charges. So in a civil trial, it's plaintiff, defendant. In a criminal trial, it's the state, which could be your district attorney, or the prosecutor, okay, and the defendant. The defendant always gets to go last in a trial. You always have a right to defend yourself from what is said by the prosecution, yes? You always get to go last, okay? Closing arguments in a trial, the defense always goes last, okay? You guys know what exculpatory evidence is? It's evidence that is inadmissible. Okay, so like if they got evidence against you without a warrant, it'd be exculpatory or inadmissible. You're not allowed to admit that evidence into the trial. Okay, if it's gathered illegally. Maybe I'll leave some of this crap off the test. But I'll talk about as much of it as I can tomorrow. Okay, it is pretty interesting stuff. You know, I take my time with it generally and tell stories, you know, like normal. But just kind of flying through it here, okay? But this will be really, I want to talk about this jurisdiction, about when you know a case is federal, when you know it's, which court gets original jurisdiction, okay? Does it start here, or does it start here? When can you appeal over here from here? Can you appeal from over here to here? Yeah, you can, okay? When? That stuff I'll talk about tomorrow, okay? Bye-bye.